Mark pounds insistently on the door of Emma's house, his ex-wife. His trembling, pleading voice makes it clear that he needs to get in, but not for friendly reasons. Inside, Emma hesitates. She knows Mark hasn't come for a social visit but because he's desperate, consumed by something she's witnessed before. Next to her, their teenage son, James, hears his father's voice and feels a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that this time things might be different and fear that it will all repeat, as it has so many times before. James recalls other occasions when his father, under the influence of addiction, promised to change but could never keep those promises. For James, each knock on the door is a painful reminder that, as much as he wants to believe, change may never come. James is a smart and creative kid who has found in technology a way to escape the chaos that often reigns at home. His laptop is more than just a study tool. It's his gateway to a world where he has control, where he can create, program, and explore his passions. Recently, he started developing an important project, an app that could help him gain recognition and open doors to the future. He dreams of one day presenting his app at a school technology fair and maybe even winning a scholarship. For James, the laptop represents the bridge between his dreams and reality, something he can shape with his own hands, far from the shadows of addiction that surround his family. Every line of code he writes is an attempt to build a better future, one where he can escape the harsh reality he lives in at home. While James works in his room, his father's problems draw ever closer. Mark, outside, is trapped in a cycle of dependency he cannot break. He has promised countless times that he would change, that he would overcome his addictions and return to being the man he once was. But each time the temptation becomes too strong, he falls back into old habits. This time, however, he has reached a point where his options are running out. The debts are piling up, and the pressure from his creditors is relentless. Mark needs money, and he needs it fast, or the consequences could be severe. He knows he can't continue down this path, but at the same time, the idea of facing reality without the anesthesia of drugs is too frightening to bear. The sleepless nights, the anxiety attacks, everything seems to intensify, and Mark feels increasingly trapped, with no way out. Before we continue with this gripping story, if you're eager to see how it unfolds, subscribe to the channel to ensure you're part of our community. The content we post here can help you face life's challenges. Inside the house, Emma ponders whether to open the door. She knows that letting Mark in could mean another night of shouting, arguments, and pain, not just for her but especially for James, who has already endured so much. At the same time, she still sees in Mark the man she loved, the father of her child, and that makes her hesitate. She remembers the days when Mark was a responsible, loving, and present man. Those moments seem distant, like a dream from which she was brutally awakened. She wonders if that man is still there, hidden under layers of despair and addiction, or if he's lost forever. A mother's heart, however, always weighs more for the safety of her child, and that's what stops her from opening the door. She looks at James and sees the tension in his eyes, and that makes her decide. She can't risk it, not now, not when it's been so hard to keep things under control. Memories of past fights, sleepless nights, and shed tears all flood her mind in a whirlwind of emotions. As Mark continues knocking outside, more desperate with each passing second, James tries to focus on his work, but the echoes of his father's voice penetrate the walls, disturbing his peace. He tries to ignore it, diving into the code of the app he's developing, but anxiety starts to take over. James knows that, despite all the effort he puts into his projects, they can't fill the void left by his father's emotional absence. The sense of helplessness in the face of Mark's addiction slowly eats away at him, because deep down, James still wants to believe that his father can change. But each broken promise, each relapse, has built a wall between them, a barrier that seems insurmountable. James wonders how many more times he can be disappointed before he gives up completely. He remembers when he was younger, how he idolized his father, and feels the pain of disillusionment, as if part of his childhood had been stolen. Seeing that Emma won't open the door, Mark decides to take another route. He knows he needs money and fast. At that moment, his eyes turn to James's laptop. He thinks of all the promises he made, all the times he swore he would never put the family at risk again. But the addiction speaks louder, and, driven by desperation, he decides he has no other choice. Mark sneaks in through the living room window, moving with the skill of someone who has done this before. He knows the house well, knows where everything is, and soon reaches James's room. The house that was once his refuge now feels like a minefield, where every step could trigger an explosion of guilt. Mark knows that what he's about to do could destroy any chance of reconciliation, but at that moment, the need to feed his addiction outweighs any remorse he might feel. He has crossed so many lines, made so many mistakes, that now, at this point, everything seems like one big spiral of self-destruction. James, distracted by his work, doesn't notice his father's presence until it's too late. Mark, breathing heavily, watches his son for a moment, feeling a mix of guilt and need. He doesn't want to do this, but he feels he has no other choice. With a quick movement, he grabs the laptop off the desk and leaves before James can react. The sound of the front door closing echoes through the house, and James turns just in time to see his father disappearing into the night. The shock paralyzes him for a moment before the reality of what has happened hits him full force. He feels his heart pounding in his chest, as if his world is collapsing around him. The laptop was his only source of security, the only thing connecting him to a better future, and now it was gone. James tries to understand, tries to rationalize, but the pain is too deep, and he feels completely helpless. James runs to the door, but when he opens it, Mark is already gone. He shouts, but his voice is lost in the darkness. Desolate, James goes back inside, unable to believe what just happened. His laptop, the one thing he truly valued, is gone. He knows his father took it, and that destroys him inside. Emma, hearing her son's cries, rushes to the living room and finds him in tears. She doesn't need explanations to understand what happened. The pain and disappointment in his eyes reflect what James feels, and all she can do is hold him, trying to comfort him. But deep down, she also feels betrayed, not just by Mark but by the hope that, once again, proved to be in vain. She realizes that no matter how much she loves Mark, she can't continue living in the illusion that he will change on his own. The emptiness Mark left is almost palpable, and Emma feels as if she's sinking into an endless sea of despair. Mark, now with the laptop in hand, goes straight to a pawn shop. He can barely look at the device, knowing what it meant to James, but desperation speaks louder. He makes the transaction, receiving an amount that doesn't even come close to the laptop's real value, but at that moment, it seems enough. With the money in hand, he leaves the shop, feeling even emptier than before. He knows he crossed a line he may never be able to return from, but the addiction drives him forward, giving him no time to think about the consequences. As he walks through the dark streets, Mark wonders where his life took such a dark turn. He remembers the days when he was proud of his work, of his family, but now all of that seems like a distant, almost unrecognizable memory. Every step he takes feels like he's sinking deeper into an endless abyss. That night, James can't sleep. He stays up, replaying the moment he saw his father take what was most precious to him. He wonders if things will ever return to normal, if he will ever be able to trust someone who was supposed to protect him. The pain of losing the laptop is great, but the pain of losing faith in his father is even greater. Emma, on the other hand, stays by her son's side, trying to find the right words to comfort him, but none seem enough. She knows that what Mark did can't be easily forgiven and that if he wants to regain the family's trust, he'll have to do more than make empty promises. Emma reflects on all the sacrifices she's made to keep the family together and wonders if it was all worth it or if she was just prolonging the inevitable. She feels that maybe it's time to leave it all behind, but at the same time, the love she still feels for Mark stops her from making a final decision. The days that follow are difficult for everyone. James tries to move on, but the absence of the laptop constantly reminds him of his father's betrayal. He withdraws even more into himself, avoiding friends and the activities that used to make him happy. The sense of loss turns into a deep emptiness that nothing seems to fill. Emma, worried about her son, tries to help but feels like she's losing the battle. She sees the distant look in James's eyes, the way he avoids any conversation about the future, and realizes that something fundamental has broken inside him. Mark, for his part, feels the weight of his actions but still can't find the strength to change. He continues attending the support group that Paul introduced him to, but each session seems to bring up more pain and regret, as if every word spoken in the group is a knife piercing his heart, constantly reminding him of what he's lost. Have you ever felt like this? Loss and emptiness can be devastating, but there's always a way out. If this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel for more content that can help you face life's challenges. As Mark tries to rebuild himself, he begins to realize that he needs to do something concrete to show James that he's committed to change. He decides to look for the laptop, but finds out it has already been resold, and tracking its whereabouts becomes almost impossible. Desperate, Mark turns to Paul, who advises him to focus on recovery and not give up on regaining James's trust, even if the path is long and difficult. Mark knows Paul is right, but the sense of helplessness continues to haunt him. He starts thinking of other ways to make up for what he did, but none seem adequate. Every day that passes, he feels like time is running out, and if he doesn't act soon, he'll lose James forever. Finally, Mark decides that if he can't return the laptop to James, at least he can try to regain his respect in another way. He begins writing a letter to his son, detailing everything he went through and what led him to do what he did. In the letter, Mark doesn't directly ask for forgiveness, but explains his struggle with addiction and how he wants, more than anything, to be a better father. He spends hours writing, tearing up, and rewriting until he finally feels he's found the right words. He gives the letter to James without saying a word, and waits. James, reading the letter, feels a whirlwind of emotions. The pain and anger are still there, but something in his father's words touches his heart. He realizes that, despite everything, Mark is trying to change. It's a timid attempt, but it's a start. James doesn't respond immediately, but keeps the letter, pondering what to do next. Reconciliation doesn't happen overnight, but little by little, father and son begin to rebuild their relationship, brick by brick, with the promise that this time, things will be different. Did you enjoy the content so far? Don't forget to leave your comment below and share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Your participation is very important to us. Days after receiving the letter, James decides to give his father a chance. He realizes that despite the hurt, there's still a bond between them, a thread of hope that can be strengthened if both are willing to fight for it. James then approaches Mark and suggests they spend more time together. It's not a complete reconciliation, but it's a start. Mark, surprised and moved by his son's openness, sees this as a unique opportunity to redeem himself. Mark begins to actively participate in James's life, starting by attending his school activities. He goes to parent-teacher meetings, watches basketball games, and whenever possible, tries to learn more about his son's interests, especially the world of technology. Although the relationship is still fragile, these small interactions begin to create a new foundation of trust between them. Paul continues to be a constant support in Mark's life. He encourages him to keep attending support group meetings and to work on his recovery one day at a time. Mark also starts getting involved in volunteer activities, helping others who are struggling with addiction. These experiences not only strengthen his determination to change but also help him find a new purpose in life. At home, Emma watches Mark's changes with caution. She has seen many attempts fail before, but this time there's something different. Mark seems more focused, more determined to make things work. He starts participating more in household chores and communicating better with her, trying to repair the damage he's caused over the years. Over time, the relationship between Mark and James begins to blossom again. Mark, aware that he can't go back and undo the past, focuses on building a better future for both of them. He supports James in his projects, even helping him get a new laptop, something that represents much more than just a gift. It's a symbol of Mark's commitment to being a present and responsible father. James, in turn, begins to feel that he can trust his father again. He still carries the scars of the past, but he realizes that Mark's redemption is genuine. Together, they start working on technology projects, something that not only brings them closer but also serves as a way for both to redeem themselves. Mark for his past mistakes and James for letting go of resentment and allowing his father back into his life. Mark remains steadfast in his recovery journey. Every day is a battle, but he finds strength in his desire to be a better father and in his commitment to the support group. Slowly, he begins to regain the respect of Emma and James, not just through words, but mainly through actions. The relationship between Mark and James reaches a new level when James invites his father to attend a presentation of his project at school. Mark, who once couldn't even keep a promise, now finds himself in a position of honor beside his son, supporting him in something that's so important to him. On the day of the presentation, Mark watches with pride as James confidently presents his project, knowing that this time, he's not alone. Before we move on to the end, how about liking the video? It helps us reach more people and continue bringing impactful stories like this to you. At the end of the presentation, James receives praise from teachers and classmates, but the greatest recognition comes from his father. Mark, emotional, tells James that he's proud of him, not just for the project but for the person he's becoming. James, in turn, thanks his father for being there, something he had longed for so much. The complete reconciliation between Mark, James, and Emma doesn't happen overnight, but it's built over time, with patience, understanding, and a lot of effort. Mark knows he still has a long way to go, but he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep his family together. He also begins planning the future with James, dreaming together of projects they can develop, not just as father and son, but as partners who have finally found a common path. Throughout this journey, Mark realizes that true redemption doesn't come from grand gestures but from small daily actions. He learns the importance of being present, of listening, of supporting, and, above all, of being honest with himself and those he loves. James, in turn, discovers that although the scars of the past never completely disappear, they can become part of a new story, a story of overcoming, resilience, and, above all, love. The days that once seemed endless now take on new meaning, filled with the hope of a brighter future. Mark and James continue to grow closer, and the interactions that were once marked by tension and distrust begin to be replaced by moments of true affection and connection. James, who once avoided talking about his projects and dreams with his father, now begins to share more of his life, showing Mark each progress, each line of code, each new idea. Mark, in turn, strives to learn about what motivates his son, finding joy in seeing him flourish in something that is so passionate for him. We want to hear from you. Leave your comment below telling us what you thought of this journey and share this video with someone who needs a message of hope and overcoming. The trust between father and son is slowly but solidly restored. Mark understands that each day is a new opportunity to do things right, and he doesn't waste any of these chances. He dedicates himself to rebuilding what was lost, not just with James but also with Emma. He realizes that to regain the love and respect of his family, he needs to show through actions, not just words, that he has changed. James, who once carried a heavy grudge in his heart, begins to see his father in a new light. He understands that Mark's journey wasn't easy, but he admires the willpower he demonstrates in overcoming his demons. This admiration grows when Mark, after months of effort and dedication, finally finds himself free from addiction. This moment is celebrated by the family as a true victory, not just for Mark but for everyone who stood by his side. Over time, Mark begins to regain the respect of his community. The people who once saw him only as a lost man, consumed by his own vices, now begin to notice the changes he's making in his life. He gets involved in support groups, where he shares his story with others going through similar situations. With each meeting, Mark feels stronger, knowing that his experiences can help others find the path to recovery. He begins to feel a new form of pride, not the inflated, selfish pride of before, but a humble pride based on resilience and the ability to rise again after so many falls. James, seeing his father dedicating himself to recovery, begins to realize that there may still be hope for their relationship. He sees Mark attending school events, something he never did before. The conversations between father and son, once sparse and tense, now become more frequent and sincere. Mark makes a point of asking about James's interests, about the projects he's developing, and even tries to understand the more complex aspects of programming, something that always seemed so distant from his own reality. This attempt at connection, even though slow, begins to build a new kind of relationship between them, based on mutual respect and understanding. Emma, who observed all these changes with caution, begins to allow herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, Mark has really changed. She sees how he interacts with James, how he's present in a way he never was before. Gradually, she also starts to lower her guard, allowing Mark to get closer to her in small but significant ways. A family dinner, a quiet conversation on the porch, small gestures that indicate that the wounds of the past are beginning to heal, even if slowly. As the months go by, Mark and James begin working together on a new project. This time, it's not just something James is developing alone, but a collaboration between father and son. Mark suggests ideas, helps with research, and most importantly, supports James at every step of the process. This project becomes a symbol of the new relationship they're building, proof that even after so much suffering and distrust, it's still possible to create something beautiful together. The project they develop together is an app designed to help others struggling with addiction. James, using his programming skills, creates a platform where users can access resources, find support groups, and even connect with mentors who have gone through similar situations. Mark, with his experience and knowledge of what it takes to overcome these challenges, provides content and guidance for the app. Together, they build something that not only brings them closer but also has the potential to help many others. This collaboration gives Mark a new purpose, a reason to continue his recovery and stay on the right path. As they work on this project, Mark and James spend a lot of time together. They discuss the best features to include in the app, how to make it more accessible and useful for those in need. These discussions are not just technical but also emotional, as every decision is made based on the experiences they both lived through. Mark shares stories of his struggle with addiction, and James listens attentively, gaining more insight into what his father faced during all those years. These conversations bring a new level of understanding between them, something that never existed before. The project progresses, and soon it becomes something bigger than they both imagined. Mark and James start receiving positive feedback from people using the app and finding in it a form of support they didn't have before. These messages of gratitude are a powerful reminder to Mark of how much he has managed to change, not just for himself, but also for the positive impact he's now having on others' lives. Each message that arrives is a small victory, proof that all the effort was worth it. The relationship between Mark and James, once so fragile, is now stronger than ever. They've gone from distant father and son to partners in a project that holds deep meaning for both of them. This project becomes a bridge that connects their lives in a way neither of them ever imagined. They celebrate each achievement together, each new milestone reached, and gradually, what was once just an attempt at redemption turns into true reconciliation. Emma, observing all this, feels she can finally begin to believe in the future. She sees Mark as the man he always could have been, and James as the resilient and strong son who grew from all the difficulties he faced. The family, once fragmented and hopeless, now begins to feel whole again. Emma and Mark start having conversations about the future, something they hadn't done in a long time. They talk about possibilities, about dreams they once had and that now seem possible again. With time, the app that Mark and James developed begins to gain notoriety. It's mentioned in articles, and soon, other experts start taking an interest in the project. Mark and James are invited to events where they can share their story and the impact the app is having on many people's lives. These opportunities not only validate the hard work they put into the project but also solidify the relationship they rebuilt along the way. One of the most significant moments comes when Mark and James are invited to speak at a conference on technology and mental health. Mark, who once feared exposing himself, now finds himself in a position where he can share his story with a larger audience, hoping it might inspire others to find the strength to change. James, standing by his father, feels proud, not just of the project's success but of the man Mark has become. At the conference, they're received with applause, and when Mark starts to speak, he feels that, finally, he has found a true purpose in his life. On that stage, Mark shares his journey of struggling with addiction, the challenges he faced, and how his family's support and the development of the app were crucial to his recovery. He talks about the importance of not giving up, even when everything seems lost, and about how reconnecting with James was essential for him to find his way back. Every word he says is filled with sincerity, and the audience can feel the truth in his story. When he finishes, he receives a standing ovation, something he never imagined could happen in his life. James, listening to his father's words, feels a deep sense of pride. He sees how much Mark has changed, how much he has grown and strengthened over this time. And he knows that this change wasn't easy, but it was achieved with a lot of effort, perseverance, and above all, love. For James, seeing his father on that stage, sharing his story with the world, is the final proof that everything they went through was worth it. After the conference, Mark and James receive several proposals to expand the app, to bring it to new platforms, and even for partnerships with larger organizations. Each of these proposals is a new opportunity, a new stage in the journey they started together. Mark, who once was lost and directionless, now sees himself as part of something much bigger, something that has the power to really make a difference in the world. The relationship between Mark, James, and Emma continues to strengthen. They now see themselves as a true family, united by bonds forged in the fire of adversity. They continue working together, planning the future together, and living each day as a new opportunity to grow even closer. Mark, who once felt he had lost everything, now realizes he has gained something much more valuable, the trust and love of his family. We've reached the end of another inspiring story. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep following content like this. Your presence makes all the difference. See you in the next video.